Good afternoon. Um, Welcome to the Native Wellness Institute Power Hour. And today the topic that I'm going to talk about is wellness and maturity. Maturity, if I can get that out. Um, so I'd just like to greet everybody and Oki Netaniko Aste Nikiwa. My name is Lori Newbreast, and I am a member of the Blackfoot Confederacy, but I live on the Blackfeet Reservation in Montana. And otherwise, we're known as AKA Unspakpikani. Um, so I come to you from my traditional territory, and I would like to start off today um, the in the Native Wellness Institute Power Hour, just giving appreciation for all of you that are out there in internet land and wherever you are sitting physically on the earth. I just want to acknowledge that land base of the indigenous traditional caretakers of that spot on earth. And I think that today, as I share with you some of my reflections on, maintaining your wellness during the pandemic, um, but also really thinking and feeling reflective and feeling gratitude, sadness, happiness, calmness, uh, sometimes shock and surprise, delight. And I also am wanting to talk about some people are, once like the anthropologists came to our people worldwide for indigenous people, and they started writing things about us. The way we went through life, they came up with these terms, rites of passage, RITES, not like civil rights, RIGHTS. And it was that word, RITES, really um, had a cultural reflection about the cultures they came from, where when you had rites, when you were celebrating or had a ceremonial rite, it was had a place. It was contained to a geography, maybe even sometimes a day of the week. And using the English language for this power hour, we're going to enliven and expand that concept through my Picanny eyes, through my way of knowing where I'm at in the life cycle, but also really where we are all at collectively as the human family during the pandemic. So I have to take a drink of water. Cheers. Always the most appropriate drink on the planet. Good water. Um, so today I want to start sort of like from the universe and the cosmos and then come down to where we're at now. I was sharing with somebody earlier this morning, or I was listening, when I said the word maturity, they immediately said, well, I have this thing that has 16 steps. And I said, well, post it in the comments, post it in the chat. Because I think that one of the beautiful things about the Native Wellness Power Hour is it opens the concept of portals of cross-sharing knowledge from many indigenous people and many experiences in the living generation from wherever the traditional homeland are of people who are sharing during this time. You know, they've had international guests, or what we call international guests, but people from, you know, the southern hemisphere, from the northern hemisphere, come on and share through this portal. So that concept of creating space, um, a holistic space, which, you know, those of you that have seen me before, I have 3 very high maintenance res dogs. So my biggest res dog, if I do not let her into the house, there she is, I will be right back. So I'm asking for your patience. Sit down. Sit down. Thank you. Uh, she's 67 pounds of fun. And but I thought of this medium that we're all on during this time, during the pandemic. Whatever you thought of prior to February 2020 or December 2019 about the power of the internet, we are all experiencing something here on the Power Hour where it's been a cyber indigenization of sharing our wisdom. And it's with the underlying, my intention for being here today is for the underlying hope and my prayers that we all make it through the pandemic. And I mean a collective person, there, whatever lands you come from, there are cultures that did not arrive at today. Their descendants are still here because they're in the spirit world, but they are not part of the physical living generation. And so that is my wish for everybody, for every family, for every person. And that's my prayer. That's what I practice. You know, when it's like, um, it is possible during this time to stay in prayer 24/7 because the connection that creates is part of the acceptance that we are all in this shared collective experience. And to have one mind that we get through it in a good way, I think is a marker of, as the human family, a stage of maturity, a rite of passage. And if you hear crunching, that's my big dog. She loves yogurt, but she likes to tear up the containers. um, but it's plant-based, so it's okay. um, but so if we, as I was thinking about today, that concept that collectively we're in an experience where we're being asked, all the messaging about wearing a mask, when people are starting to realize that somebody won't necessarily do it for their protection of their own life. So they're trying to encourage them, please wear a mask for those you love, to protect those you love. And it's really starting to see that we're made up of individuals, but to move collectively forward, we must be considerate and we must think and we must act in a way that acknowledges that we are not alone in this, that we do need each other. And so I've thought a lot about that when I've heard, you know, like all the messaging trying to get on the right track about mask wearing, about getting the vaccine, about washing your hands. I mean, if you get to like over 30 and someone has to convince you to wash your hands, I really, have thought about that. And I was trying to coach somebody gently. Please clean your phone every day. It just makes sense because I know people take their phones everywhere in all facets of their daily life. And so when we're thinking about that, I started thinking about what is that ownership of aloneness, of that I'm going to only act on my behalf. And in the ways of the culture I belong to and many indigenous cultures, they have teachings around that really you are never alone because we came from the Creator. We came from the cosmos. The origin of our people is as old as, the stars. And in wellness, and, if I could say, I had an understanding of what people meant from healing from trauma. Is you started healing in a living way. You started living in, no, that's the pug. And if any of you know a pug, she can get pretty territorial. So, but in living and considering other people and thinking good thing, being connected is a good thing. And as people move through life, if we get to the living generation and you go through those different stages, you're conceived, your life force arrives on earth, and you start moving through passages of time. In those stages, it's not even a stage, although that also makes me think of somebody should break out in a song. Um, but that is part of the wisdom of owning that we are gifted a life, and it has a cycle, and it is each passage, as you mature, as you grow, as you learn to walk, as you learn to feed yourself, and then later on how to feed other people, how to care for other people, how to be a part of a group, to do it so that everybody moves forward in the best way possible, so that your interactions are positive. They are moving people forward. They are helping people and yourself create those spaces of goodwill, of care for each other, for compassion. And I always, when I'm listening to like all the social marketing messages right now, or all the coaching, how to get through this time, I thought, my ancestors and one generation behind me didn't necessarily have to have that coaching on how to behave. And so it's a good thing right now for us to be mindful of how our behavior impacts other people. Because just as harsh words can impact other people, the act of kindness or the act of acknowledging people as we move along, that can also impact people. And it takes on a whole other type of responsibility and as we move through this. I'm sorry, my dog just wants some attention, so I hear her dragging something that she should not be. Excuse me one more time. Peace has been restored to the Res Kingdom. Um, so I was thinking about that, like all the coaching that is coming through this portal. And then you have the power hour that really, it has been a unique experience, but it's been the right experience to carry forth the teachings of the ancestors, to talk about the celebration of wellness, of living today, the privilege of being alive today in this living generation. All the many good ways that we connect, and this has been one. And so I'd like to kind of like focus in on that. That maturity, sometimes you can find, lists, bullet points, or people will say, you're too old to act like that. Or they will somehow bind it to age. But at every stage of life, there is maturity. Because that's part of the cycle of moving on to the next hoop. And sometimes when that saying in English, act your age, you're too old to do that, what it's doing is, if people get sometimes, this is just dog day. One more time, sorry. No, I think this is the most they've ever interrupted the power hour, but it is Friday, and they also are zoomed out, and they don't understand that. Maybe if they were on camera, they'd act different, but I was thinking about that, how we have these messages about how to encapsulate behavior in order to be mature. But really, that isn't maturity. That is a type of really social coaching to not feel to be fully alive, not to feel all the feelings you always feel or you're capable as a human person. And so I would like to share with you some examples of maturity. Rather than telling you what not to do. I worked with a group of old ladies, and in our way, using the English language, that's a term of respect. And we went to the West Edmonton Mall in Alberta, Canada, on a youth prevention trip. They were part of a youth program. And when we were all preparing to go on that exciting journey, you could not tell if it was a teenager, an adolescent, or if it was a 70-year-old grandma. because their enthusiasm, their zeal to have an adventure, to say that they were going to go on the rides, that they were going to get in the artificial wave pool, that they were going to go through the whole mall, or they were excited to get their hotel themed rooms during that youth event. You could not tell that there was any age had to do with anything, because they were all looking forward to a new experience. They were all looking forward to having fun. And I think that play, having fun, using kind humor, using your wit, enjoying storytelling, that's ageless. And it is a sign of maturity at no matter what your chronological age. Because the first time a child tells a joke or attempts to tell a joke, they are showing maturity for what's appropriate for their life cycle at that stage. And when older people might see a toy, or they might see something that is new and exciting that's come through a portal on the internet, and they get enthusiastic, and they learn to play a video game, or they learn to do, I don't know, I've never played it, so I'm not endorsing it, but they learn to play Candy Crush. I don't know what it is, but I know a lot of people like it. That enjoyment, that willingness to be playful is a sign of maturity, because that's a part of the brain, the emotions, the spirit, the physical body being fully engaged in the living moment. So play is also a sign of maturity. And one time, a couple years back at Christmas time, people were giving out at one of the society's social gathering dances. They were giving out toys, stuffed toys, to all the kids. And they went by one of the elders that I was with, and she waved him over, and they said, "Oh, here, take these home." And she goes, "No, I want it." She wanted a little stuffed toy. And I think what has happened in our communities, as all the stuff that has come to us through history, is we have begun to change that concept of maturity and of aging, chronological aging. And just like, we're decolonizing, re-indigenizing, living the teachings of the ancestors, all of that, but yet we have to see that there are layers of that. When, if you want to say, like, the blanket of colonialism came to our communities, that's one it also touched, that how you mature, how you behave. And our communities have a margin of safety that 100 years, 10 years ago, our ancestors did not. And one of the things about free expression is that you are safe. In those moments, you are safe when you can freely express yourself through play, through enjoyment, through expressing a preference, through celebrating somebody's achievement, through honoring someone. And so I would say, for a list and wellness, is when you are safe enough to play. For our communities, in our wellness maturity cycle that we're in, when we can see that we've reached another level of aging out of the colonial experience and our healing, when our communities are safe again. And that's from the community level down to the individual level. When you are safe enough to express your individual opinion, your individual preference, your skill, your gift, whatever that gift is, when you're free to express it in the community and it supports the collective good so that everybody has that same freedom, regardless of, there's new English terminology, regardless of your gender or, your sexual orientation or your chronological age or, the color of your eyes, whatever it is that influences those restrictions that have come over time to our communities. But safety is important. It is a part of being mature. And there's responsibility in that. There are many, for my people, there are stories that predate contact or disruption, however you want to look at it, that talk about you get consent from people to touch their personal property, to touch themselves, to touch their bodies, to acknowledge their position in the community. Everybody from a child to the eldest person in a community, it requires their consent. And so there are ancient stories about that, about you don't take from others, not just their material, because in the material action of taking from other people, there's also a spiritual component to it. And that's also why in some of the communities, why you can go, and now you hear this expression a lot. I've seen it even on Facebook. When we talk about lateral oppression, people now are saying, I couldn't take the lateral oppression. But really, that is a signal that we are maturing. It's just like if you didn't wear the same size shoes when you were 12 years old that you wore when you were 8, or the same size moccasins when you're 15 that you wore as an infant. That you don't stay in a cycle. Life is about change. Life is about growth. And so I was thinking about that, like examples of where I've seen people want to stop a behavior, and then they're saying, well, what do I replace it with? And so I wanted to give an example of maturing. There's a difference between compassion and caring and consideration of people and gossip. So when I was thinking about this in terms of my own behavior, and as I went through wellness experiences, not wanting to pay forward, the pain that had been caused in my life, but move forward. And gossip always makes somebody feel bad. And so when I started thinking about that, like in a visual way, right, because I'm a visual thinker, if you think about harsh words towards somebody as little nicks in their spirit, you're not killing them. Although we know that bullying can result in that, can drive someone to that. But gossip is those little nicks, kind of like the little paper cuts of the world. And so once I thought of that, I thought, what would be the opposite? How do you get back to caring, compassion, support of somebody? Talking, sharing their experience because you want to help them, or you want to ask somebody to join you to pray for them in some way, to uh, send to their spirit that caring. And so I thought of that. What would I do if I seen a bunch of little nicks on somebody, or a bunch of they had paper cuts? What would I do? I would offer my help. I would think about, do I have something to soothe those little nicks? Do I have something to promote the healing of their spirit, their skin in the real world? And how could I help them strengthen themselves? And I can only think about that now because I was also the recipient of that help. So I know it is possible. I was helped by people that had no other intention than to help me in my wellness journey. That was their only agenda, because they cared that collectively we all move back to our true selves. And so, if you think about that, how do you practice those good words? And sometimes when people change and their friendships may change, the relatives may change. No, joking. Um, how do you practice that way of being? How do you let go of a way that's not serving anybody? It's not making you a stronger person, because paying forward somebody else, in the example of gossiping, you are not strengthening yourself. You are creating a deficit within yourself. There's no vitamin to cure gossiping. Only action through good intentions can cure it, can heal it. And so you are actually not strengthening yourself. You're not being all the best you could be that the ancestors dreamed for all of us. And so through that, I practiced. I studied communications. I'm a dedicated person to diplomatic language to the best of my ability. Sometimes I backslide, I'm human. But to look for that way forward through all the things that we are challenged with, through the legacy of the historical experience, to find that diplomatic way forward, and to build strength in myself, but also in other people. Because then, you don't have to carry anyone on your back when everyone's strong. And I see the evidence of that during this time. I see the strengthening of the people. And that, to me, is something that I'm going to carry forward from this moment in my life, from this time, when 10 years, 20 years from now, when I explain it to people, I see the strengthening of the people during this time. I seen their resilience. I witnessed it. I witnessed the innovation, the intelligent response, the strategic action to preserve our culture. I've read, I've heard, I've heard stories of from other people of all ages in our communities moving forward, dedicating themselves to the ancestors' teachings, dedicating themselves to the Creator's path of their people. I've seen that. And so, as much as this is a challenging time, I've also, in that position as a witness, that's what I'm going to carry forward from this experience. Because I am witnessing on a daily basis the strength of the people. And we have our moments. And so there's another part of maturing or aging in every life cycle. And it doesn't matter if you're a 12-year-old and you're finishing, today's your last day of cyber school, and maybe your eyes are looking like this. And you come to that point where you need rest. Often is play. Unobstructed time, unagendaed time, where you are experiencing the room around you, the world around you, in a playful way. So play is rest. And we need that at all ages. I have a number of friends that they never put together a puzzle when they were children. But now they are like, gluing their puzzles together as they finish them. They found new ways during this time to have that playful moment, to be in a moment where you're using all your facilities in a real life, touchy-feely, tactical way. But play is rest. And then there is the physical rest that we all need. And what has changed since we've been regulated? They regulated people in boarding school, they regulate people during the school day, they regulate us at work. That has moved towards a way where sleep isn't seen as you're not productive. That's another culture's way of thinking about sleep. Sleep is the gifting time of the Creator and the ancestors and the spiritual world. Sleep is the gifting time of the universe. And it enables us to temporarily put aside our human mind, although it's still there, and really become a whole person by acknowledging your brain. It lets the brain be the driver. The brain will take care of your breath and respiration. It will take care of your physical body during that time. And it enables us to problem solve, to gain new goals, to receive new teachings about our connection to the world. And often, I had a discussion, many times with one of my cousins, my older cousins, about how important dreaming was. To talk about it, to sleep, to take a nap. Because some people, they're like black belt nappers, and there is you don't lose demerits, or you don't get a bad report card or a note sent home if you nap during the pandemic. That seems like an appropriate response, because there's so much coming in at people every day, and we've changed our tempo of life. But during that time, when your body is at rest, that is another special time of our consciousness of being part of the living generation. And often, I've heard this from many people in the culture that I belong to, is that we always lived by our dreams. And so really, as we're going through this healing process, this wellness process as a group of people, indigenous people, and as members of the human family, it is to honor those times when you rest. And it changes. Physically, your body changes. And, nobody would deprive a 4-month-old child or baby of their rest time. And during this time that we're living in, it is critical that we have rest. And even if that means you pause during interaction on the portal, it sounds like, do. But rest is important. So to break apart and have my intentional rest period, I went out, and today's a sunny day, and I stood outside. It's very cold, so I had to have my coat on. But I stood outside and I just closed my eyes, and I had the sun shine on my face. Because I needed the sun, the atmosphere, the natural world, the air outside to give me a little hug during my moment of rest, so I could continue my day, the afternoon, in a good way. So rest is critical at all stages of life, but it is critical during this time. And now people are being coached on, this is like, that little guy in The Hobbit, my precious, even this has changed during the pandemic. It's become the lifeline of connection for many people. And it's a way to stay connected to people. So in the pandemic, everything is kind of gray. It's not black or white, good or bad. It's not that Western world way of thinking. It's a thing of necessity. This is a tool of necessity. And it's okay how you stay connected. I heard this, I've told other people this. Texting is caring. Maybe 9 months ago, you could get on full-on 10 telephone calls a day and talk to people for hours on the end about what's happening, and I'm almost out of coffee, and my toilet paper supply. But right now, you might get down to a text. How many rolls you got left? Or you need any? Need any TP? And to honor that how you are connecting to people is what you can do now. And no judgment of what that really involves. Because as we move through this experience, every day there's something new coming in. There's something new to deal with. There's another message, through the portal. And so that also is maturity, to recognize the moment you're in and then act accordingly. So some days I have a lot of conversations through the phone, through this portal. And then some days I just text them. And then some days I trust them to be okay on their own. I trust the universe to take care of all the people I love and care about, and the rest of the human family. And I take care of the human that I'm really responsible for, which is myself. And so in maturity, there's all that word has in the English language. It came with a set of conditions and definitions. But in our way, as we're moving through our winter counts, and we're in midwinter now, or I'm in midwinter where I live. As we move through those waves, we mark the passage of life and the living generations. And your own life, it changes. So one of the things, I enjoy, like next time I do a power hour, I might show up with, like the Hunger Game hair, blue or something. and, but one of the things I've enjoyed during the pandemic is seeing which of my genetics are showing up on the top of my head. Which ancestors' hair am I joining in? Am I now growing? And I have one of my cousins that lives in Utah. We have the same genetic hair pattern. And I just find that fascinating and comforting, and to know that 100 years ago, somebody in my family had this genetic hair pattern. But of course, they loved new things too. And so if I decide, I'm gonna, I've never had orange hair except for by accident in a bad dye job, but maybe I want to go orange, who knows? They would be with that, because it's about experiencing the life of now, that curiosity, that inventiveness, that really a celebration of the creative spirit that I've seen come through this portal from Indigenous communities everywhere. The presence of TikTok in our lives, I was just like, our brother riding the skateboard. When you show up at the presidential inauguration video, that I'm not saying, that was the turning point for the whole human family on the planet, but it may have been. And just to see the inventiveness of people wanting to share, wanting to connect, wanting to celebrate being Indigenous. Yeah, we're in a pandemic, but you know what? We are still like incredibly interesting to see in my own community how they marked a day when our ancestors suffered in a massacre, but how they have turned it around to talk about this is how they got through it, because they were strong, they were resilient, because they cared about each other. They wanted our culture to go forward. And this is what they did to, so that we're living today. To use this portal to affirm, to celebrate our cultural ways of being. Yes, it is necessary that we practice those things to not, pay forward the COVID-19, because it is asking for a free ride on the lives of our people. So we must do our part. And this concept of the internet, of the portal, is also the way that many early in the creation of the people, much of the medicine came through what people now call quantum physics, through portals. And that's why I find that English word, like, it's funny that I've heard it more now during the pandemic than I ever have. You know, portals of communication. But there are a lot of teachings in many cultures about how through certain spaces, through sacred sites, through ways of prayer, ways of being, people, our ancestors were able to receive those messages and that help, that very practical, material help to move forward. And I've seen, you can even, if you Google medicine wheel, all these images come up. But we're whole people. So this is my mature thought of today. If I could describe each and every one of you, regardless of what your chronological age is, you are the medicine wheel. You're that whole medicine wheel. You're everything wrapped up because you come from the creation of the galactic medicine wheel. It's us. And when you think of moving through your chronological age, whatever it is, it changes. You know, at each stage, there's care that you need to give to your physical body, to your emotional brain. That's really the mind. And to your spiritual, physical, mental, and emotional. I heard a discussion about how the mind really is always, you want to become whole with the brain because the brain has a function in making you the best that you can be. And it can help you during those moments during the pandemic where maybe you feel unsure, maybe you're feeling anxious, maybe you need a boost of confidence, and the brain can help you out because it controls the breath. It enables you to breathe without you thinking about it, but it also can help you when you mindfully join your mind with the brain and you breathe. And so really, in that concept of the medicine wheel that during wellness, it's come to mean that we're healing from something, but we're really all that all the time. It's just that what we pay attention to and what is safe enough to show or to feel. And so when I want to talk about today, it was, you know, what do you do? How do you seek to be the most mature person if you're 16, if you're 29, 49, 76? Or I seen somebody up in a Northern Creek community turned 100, one of their grandmas. If you're 100, you have in that particular chronological age, there is a season of maturity that you move into. And just like that child that learns to tell their first joke, and everybody, they may have heard that joke 100 times before, they laugh because that child has, I always think of it in the English language, that child has taken a step into being a kid, where they start forming those social groups that, yes, involve their family members, but they're willing to involve other people. They're willing to communicate as part of an active person in the community. They're moving into a different stage. And as people change over time, they also go through a maturity phase of their life cycle at that moment, where maybe they've shown enough people how to pitch a teepee, and now they just coach because they know that they can trust those people they've shown to take responsibility for that knowledge. And I think at every age in our communities, that's what I've also seen during this time. I've seen people take responsibility for their moment in their age cycle. They are the able-bodied. They are the ones that could, deliver, 5,000 meals to our community in cold weather. They were the ones that were physically able to go out and help people. And they've taken responsibility. And I've seen through those actions a different level of trust return to the people. That we're trusting each other because we're all collectively in this moment where we want our families to be safe. Sometimes we don't know, right? It's our first experience collectively, how to move forward. So we go back to what holds us together. If you want to say everybody embraces their medicine wheel themselves. And if I could say in a different way, that the people are the medicine that the people need. Because we've been gifted with a particular way of being, culture, our cultural way of being, that enables us to think globally. We think galactically. And that is a real strength moving forward. So as we go and we mark 1 year's time, I don't know if anyone feels like making a birthday cake for the 1 year pandemic, but feel free, do what you gotta do. As we move forward together as a collective family, that we begin to understand our part as Indigenous people. We are fully engaged in moving forward in a good way. And that means that we will have the capacity to address the challenges that come up. We have the strength, and we no longer have to doubt that the living generation can embrace those teachings of the ancestors. We're all living them to a degree, just by every breath we take. So as we're coming to the end of the Power Hour today, I just want to thank you again for your patience with my res dogs. Now they're all sleeping. They have their moments, they have their cycles. But really to recapture what that meant in your culture for people to age chronologically, for your culture in its winter count, or the way your people mark time, to recapture and acknowledge that strength, that your community focus on the strength that your community has shown during this time, and to each other. And in the human family experience, we have a role moving forward, and nobody can fulfill that but us. We are given this life as an Indigenous person. We've been gifted this role. So ask yourself, how am I going to move forward in a good way, regardless of your chronological age? What am I going to do to support everybody collectively? It's possible. And then one of the teachings that I carry throughout my life, that I was given to me and that I was supported in, Because sometimes, you know, I'm going to work on world peace today, and it's going to start with me. I'm going to find peace within myself. I'm going to find acceptance of who I am. And so you can always have wellness in those moments when it feels overwhelming. That's your clue to let it begin with me. And many times you have to revisit that moment because you're worth it. You're worth care, you're worth consideration, you're worth rest, you're worth connection, you're worth compassion. And don't forget to play. Find a way to play in every day. Hey, that kind of rhymes. So today, thank you for joining the Native Wellness Power Hour. And somebody will be back in this portal on Monday again to share those messages that we will all move forward in a good way, and we will all be able to gather in real life in a good way again. So have a great weekend, have a good night's sleep, and I wish you well, and I love you all. Bye bye for now.